Hello, welcome to my health class. So, when you think of sex ed, you might think of scenes like in Mean Girls where the PE teacher is yelling at the group of kids and saying things like, "Don't have sex or you will get pregnant and you will die." Well, laughter aside, that is actually kind of the reality of sex ed for today's young people. And so I wanted to talk about it because sex ed is absolutely necessary. The decisions we make about relationships, sexuality, and sexual behavior can impact our health and potentially the rest of our lives. Sexual education gives young people the tools they need to make healthy decisions about these things. Programs of abstinence and contraception, while they're great, they're not enough. Sexual education must provide honest and age-appropriate information and teach skills that are necessary for youth to take personal responsibility for their overall health and well-being. Before I continue, let's define sexual health education. I have fancy papers out here so I can read some definitions. According to futureofsexed.org, sex education is the provision of information about bodily development, sex, sexuality, relationships, along with skills building to help young people communicate about and make informed decisions regarding sex and their sexual health. Sex education should occur throughout a student's grade levels with information appropriate to students' development and cultural background. It should include information about puberty and reproduction, abstinence, contraception and condoms, relationships, sexual violence, prevention, body image, gender identity, and sexual orientation. It should be taught by trained teachers. No PE teachers. We appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's awkward and you don't really know what you're doing, and this is stuff we need to know. Sex education should be informed by evidence of what works best to prevent unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, but it should also respect young people's right to complete and honest information. Sex education should treat sexual development as a natural, normal part of human development. Sexual education is important to young people's health and well-being by helping them avoid negative health consequences. Every year in the U.S., about 750,000 teens become pregnant, with about 82% of those being unintentional. Young people ages 15 to 24 count for about 25% of all new HIV infections Americans acquire each year. Sexual education teaches young people how to protect themselves from unintended pregnancy and STIs. Teaching young people to freely discuss contraception and condoms, as well as activities they might not be ready for, will help protect them throughout their lives. Comprehensive sex ed teaches abstinence as the only 100% effective method of preventing HIV, STIs, and unintended pregnancy, as well as a valid choice that everybody has the right to make. Even though my school has the right idea about sex education, nobody ever taught me how to understand healthy and unhealthy relationships. We as young people aren't taught the skills necessary to maintain a healthy relationship. Skills like positive communication, conflict management, and negotiating decisions around sexual activity. Not having these skills can lead to unhealthy and sometimes even violent relationships. 1 out of 10 high school students has experienced physical violence from a dating partner in the past year. Sex ed should include understanding and identifying healthy and unhealthy relationship patterns, effective ways to communicate relationship needs and manage conflicts, and strategies to avoid or end an unhealthy relationship. Comprehensive sex ed teaches not only the basics of puberty, but also instills in young people that they have the right to decide what behaviors they do or don't engage in, and to say no to unwanted sexual activity. This also teaches young people the things that can contribute to a negative or a positive body image. Now we enter a touchy subject, so here's a trigger warning. 8% of high school students have been forced to have sex, while 1 in 10 students said that they have committed sexual violence. Good sex ed teaches young people what constitutes sexual violence and how to find help if you've been assaulted. Good sex ed should also teach young people to show dignity and respect for all people, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. Even though we've made a lot of progress, LGBT youth still face discrimination. 80% of LGBT youth have experienced harassment due to sexual orientation, and 38% have experienced physical harassment. The Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, found that students who do not engage in health risk behaviors receive higher grades than those who do engage in health risk behaviors. Health-related problems in unintended pregnancy can result in both absenteeism and dropout. A 2012 study that examined 66 comprehensive sexual risk reduction programs found them to be an effective public health strategy to reduce adolescent pregnancy, HIV, and STIs. And research from the National Survey of Family Growth assessed the impact of sex education on youth sexual risk-taking for young people ages 15 through 19, and found that teens who received comprehensive sex ed were 50% less likely to experience pregnancy than those who received abstinence-only until marriage programs. Even accounting for differences in household income and education, states which teach sex ed and/or HIV education that covers abstinence as well as contraception tend to have the lowest pregnancy rates. So, what can we do about that? As cheesy as it sounds, it starts at home. Parents, it's really, really, really important that you talk to your kids about sex openly and honestly. Start young, because this is stuff that they are going to grow up being exposed to, and if they don't know how to respond to these situations, they can end up partaking in these health risk behaviors. Studies have shown that young people who communicate with their parents about sex are less likely to engage in sexual health risk-taking. Parents should normalize these discussions, and, as for the kids, don't be afraid to talk to your parents about this stuff, because even though it's probably really awkward to talk to your parents about this stuff because gross sex talk, I promise you that talk is a billion times less embarrassing than coming to your parents because you have an STI, or worse, you're pregnant and you don't know what to do because you didn't ask questions, So yeah, as for what we can do in schools for right now, I think it's just important to be open and honest at home. I don't know. And that's my rant. Bye.